heard about Ishmael, they approached me about this event, Action for Africa. And it was like, you need to read this guy's book. But they didn't tell me why. It was like, you need to read this guy's book. You really need to read this guy's book. He's a big fan. And I was like, really? I was like, okay. But then as I started reading the book, I found out that Ishmael was influenced. He was touched by the great era of hip hop. Run DMC, Eric B. and Rakim, Naughty by Nature, LL Cool J. So, and also, from reading the book, it was at the most critical times of his life. There was hip hop there to save him, or at least give him that release. And I could relate to that because it's the same thing it did for me. It's the same thing it did for a lot of youth in the city when hip hop first came about.
For me, I was drawn to hip hop because of the poetry, the language. As a kid growing up in Sierra Leone, English wasn't my immediate first language. So when I saw guys like you so versatile in the language, I was like, wow, they like me and they're so versatile in the language. So I listened, I wrote what you said. And if I didn't know certain words, I look in the dictionary. So for me, back in the day, hip hop sent me to the dictionary to look for words. This was back in the day when people used like soliloquy, clandestine in hip hop lyrics. You never have such a thing right now. No, seriously.
Well, the reason why that I really could get involved with Action for Africa is because what they do for the orphans of the war and HIV and stuff like that. And a couple of years ago, at the age of 35, after doing everything that I did with my life, in my lifetime with Run DMC, you know, all the things that we did to break ground for hip hop music and stuff like that. At the age of 35, I found out that I was adopted, and I didn't know my whole life. And this was at a period in my life where I was asking myself, am I here just to be DMC, this famous rap dude? But then I realized something. I don't just represent celebrity, I represent purpose and destiny. I was one of those at-risk kids. I was in a foster care system until I was 5 years old, and then I finally got adopted. So I can relate to all those orphans. I can relate to kids in the foster care system. I can relate to homeless kids. I can relate to the kids at war. They need somebody to represent for them, somebody that they could look at and relate to. And also, regardless if we're from different cultures, I was given a foundation of hip-hop. I can speak their language no matter where they come from. I mean, even the kids on Mars probably can understand the way I put it down with this hip-hop thing. So the same thing I did with music, how we knocked down doors and came through floors, I got to do that for these kids, these orphans in Africa, because it's an ongoing plight, and they need somebody to vocally represent them, and hip-hop is the best foundation to use that.
The reality of hip-hop is, it's inspirational, it's motivational, it's educational, but the main purpose of hip-hop is to set people free. Not just black, poor people in the ghetto. I'm talking about Asians, Africans, Europeans, all around the world. When people heard this hip-hop music, something in it said, yo, I could relate to this. When you look at Eminem and you look at the Beastie Boys, they wasn't just white rappers trying to be black MCs. It's all relevant to whether you're 6 years old or 60 years old. Not the stuff that you see out there making a lot of money for these so-called rappers who have nothing to do with the culture. But the whole purpose of hip-hop, as illustrated in his book, was to set people free.
Yesterday, flying over here, I got to meet Ishmael. And it was so crazy because as I was getting on the plane, I knew who he was right off the back as soon as I looked at him. And I kind of like, you know, he was kind of shocked too because I kind of blew him up like I was a fan. I was like, yo, oh my God, yo, what's up, Ishmael? Yo, I got your book right now and it's a pleasure to meet you. So he was looking at me like, because he seen me standing there with the hat on and everything, but he was like kind of shocked because I was acting like a groupie to him. But the same way, I guess my music touched his life. As I was reading that book, the book really touched my life. It really educated me. It really inspired me. It really motivated me. It has the similarities. Anything having to do with the spoken word, music, hip hop, literature, poetry, it all is for the purpose of educating each other, inspiring each other, and motivating each other. Well, the hip hop today is good, but it isn't great. And what I mean by it's good is there's songs out there that you like, and there's songs and videos that you see, you know, I like that. But there's no messages in the music no more. And even if you listen to the early days of hip hop up until like, I would say the late 90s, even the gangster rappers had records that had messages in them. They wouldn't ever say, pick up the gun, or look at the money, or look at the girls and this and that. It would always be, there's a story about a girl. Here's what happened. Yo, here's a story about Jack. Jack sold crack. He went to jail and he never came back. Now, these guys is like, I'm Jack. I sell crack and I'm not going to jail. So you got the youth of the generation thinking, man, I got to be like this guy. I got to be like that guy by any means necessary. So the progression of the music is good. Yes, people respect hip hop as a legitimate form of music, but the problem with it is the messages is missing. And that's what gave hip-hop its strength right now. Because if you look at hip-hop right now, I talk to DJs about this. Hip-hop is like disco right now. So what we really need to do is recreate hip-hop again by doing what, DMC? By having everybody, even the younger generation, make records like Run D used to make them like LL Cool J used to make them like Public Enemy makes them and stuff like that. So that's the problem with it. The progression is just like any other art form. But let's not forget about the purpose of the art form. A lot of people fail to realize because the rap music is selling so many records and making people so much money. Rap music is from a culture called hip hop. Hip hop is the culture. Rap music is the music of the culture. Breakdancing, or now they got freestyling. That's the dance of the hip hop culture. Graffiti, even fashion is the fashion and the art form of the hip hop culture. People look at rap music and rappers as the only thing about the culture, but also people forget about this. Writing is part of hip hop. Poetry is part of hip hop. And when you turn the music off and just speak what you write, the spoken word is part of hip hop. But right now, people are so focused on the artists and, you know, who's selling the most records, who's dating who. But that's only about 3% of what the whole hip hop culture is about. The music, like I said, the music was used to educate, share ideas, inspire people, and motivate people to be creative now. Not just to be a rapper. Hip hop didn't just create rappers. It created doctors and lawyers. I mean, I got people on Wall Street. A couple of weeks ago, a guy came up to me. He looked like he was straight out the Sopranos. DMC, I'm on Wall Street because of you and the BC Boys and Eric B. and Rakim. And I'm looking at him like, but you don't rap. He said, nah, but it's the ideas and the presentations and the concepts that you gave me allowed me to say, okay, I know what I need to do to be about it. You don't have to be a rapper. You ain't got to be a gangster. You don't even have to come from poverty to be with hip hop. Because whether you're in the ghetto or you're in Beverly Hills, there's something within the hip hop culture that we could relate to on the same basis.